Welcome back to the HiveCast. Today we have a really good friend of mine, someone that I've known for a number of years, Jefferson Moss. Jefferson, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I have been looking forward to this, partially because I feel like this is going to give us an opportunity to explain to the community where government and industry meet, which I think for those of us that are involved, we kind of have a good feel for this, and we know, what is government's role versus what is industry's role, and where do we actually overlap, and how can we support each other? But I think the majority of the community really doesn't necessarily have a sense for that. So today, we're going to dive into all things state of Utah. Jefferson is head of Nucleus, which includes a whole number of initiatives that have now all been rolled into one organization. You've really taken a lot of what the state was doing and put it under one umbrella, so to speak. But then you are also now head of the Governor's Office of Economic Development, GOED. So Jefferson, let's start at the very beginning. And one of the things that I love about you is that you have been in both industry and government. So let's use the term, you kind of get it. So walk us through in 2 minutes, walk us through what your history is in government and in industry, and then let's dive into the nucleus. I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, thanks. Well, and I would couple in higher ed because a lot of what I do is in that space. But yeah, background
and talent. You do with the Department of Workforce Services, right? Talent Ready.
Talent Ready is under USHE.
Is under
USHE
USHE.
system,
Okay.
Yeah, which is where actually Nucleus is under USHE. So higher education is part of that.
I didn't know that. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So no, I've had the fortunate kind of very, I would say sometimes an ADHD type career, but I've worked in 4 different full-time industries, jobs, whatever you want to call it. Starting my career in startups, built and sold companies when I was in my 20s, worked for a venture capital fund, shifted gears, worked in private banking for a while for some of the largest private banks. I always had a passion for helping startups. Even in the private bank side, I was living in the Bay Area, working with a lot of top CEOs in Silicon Valley. Came back and kind of dabbled. I was on the school board while I was still doing private banking, but had an interest in higher education. And the university, Utah Valley University, pulled me in to help run their endowment as a volunteer for 5 years. Ultimately, the president there said, "Hey, come join me. Would love to have you full time." So I got into higher education for a while, where I was running the endowment and running their foundation.
So you were elected onto the school board?
Yeah. So I've been a city council member, planning commissioner, and then I was elected on the school board for 4 years.
All while you were working
at different jobs. Yeah.
Okay.
And then ultimately 9 years in the legislature.
Wow. So what did you do? So you said the president of UVU brought you in. What was that role?
Yeah. So the endowment at UVU had been managed fairly well, but by a group of folks who were very successful business people, but not traditional financial investment people.
Right.
And so I was working at Credit Suisse, doing private banking for institutions, and was asked to come and help support, just give them feedback. And President Hall at the time, I gave him my feedback, and he's like, "Great, I want you to come help me run this." So for 5 years, I was a volunteer running the endowment at UVU, and so I was getting to see the investment from that side, and just purely to help support the university. And very passionate about helping especially students that come from unique backgrounds. UVU just brings anybody in and helps support them. But that was kind of what transitioned me into higher ed. Before that, my whole career was in startups and venture capital. And so I kind of pivoted into that. That ultimately led me to the Point of the Mountain. When they were opening up the Point, they were looking for somebody to come, and higher education, USHE, the Utah System of Higher Education, was really given the mandate to help make that an innovation hub.
Why did that end up with USHE?
It was before my time even in the legislature. They believed, and I actually think they were brilliant and visionary when you think about it. So they really believed that higher education should have a more important role in helping driving innovation in our state, specifically at the Point.
They meaning the legislature?
The board and the legislature came up with this, the Board of Higher Ed, and they actually went through a search committee and had a whole search. I was not looking for the job. In fact, I didn't want the job. I was going to go raise a venture fund at the time. And a couple people on that board said, "Hey, we really think you bring a unique skill set. You've been in venture capital, you've built and sold companies, you've been in higher education. you seem like the kind of the right mix of person we're looking for. Would you be interested? And I said, I've never built an innovation district. I don't even know what that looks like. And I said, but what I'll do is I'll go to the best hubs in the world. I'll bring all the smartest people that I know in Utah, top VCs, top entrepreneurs, most innovative people, and say, let's come up with what could be what's the vision of this could become. And as I went around the world looking at all these top innovation districts, that was one that really stood out to me. Is they were smart, and it was actually visionary that they had higher education playing such an active role in that, instead of it being a real estate play or a government play. And so that's really what led me down the path of helping drive this whole commercialization and leveraging higher education as an economic development driver in the system, was really what I learned as I went all over the world.
Wow. Okay. So just so that all of our listeners have a reference point, when you're talking about the point, you're talking specifically about where the prison used to be, point of the mountain, halfway between Salt Lake and Provo, essentially.
Yep.
So just to the west side of I-15 there. How much land is there?
It's about 600 acres. And the state intentionally held on to that when the prison left. And they went through this analysis. And again, this was before my time in the legislature. But they said, we can sell the land now for X amount of dollars. Or if we held on to it, it was like $7 billion in terms of revenue generated, benefit to the state. And way beyond just, traditional real estate type revenue. If you created this as a true innovation hub, where you really created opportunities for businesses to come in and incubate and to develop, and a place where we could solve big problems, labs, all these different kind of things. If you leverage it the right way, it could become a much bigger thing than just a real estate play. And so that's what I was given the mandate of under USHI, was to try to help figure out what that looked like.
So out of the 600 acres, because if I go to KSL.com and I read comments about anything related to the point, they're going to say, the comments are the developers have this, but you're telling me that that's not exactly right. You're saying, hey, there's an innovation aspect to this that is central to the plan. So if we're talking 600 acres, what percentage of that is being set aside for this kind of innovation hub?
So they've really only focused on the first phase, which is 70 acres in the center. There's going to be a lot of additional opportunities around there. And the developers that are currently there are doing a great job. They're really focusing on building out that first section, which is the promenade, some of that main, infrastructure. What we're building is very right in the heart. And this was something I learned as I went all over the world. I would ask the question, what worked well, what didn't go well? And what I learned from all these innovation hubs is they would sometimes have a place that's a convening, right? We call it Convergence Hall, a place where you can really get industry, education, and government together and integrated in, and really trying to solve big problems and bringing all the right people to the table. If they did have one, it was usually on the outskirts, and it makes sense. It's expensive real estate. Why would you want to put that right in the middle? But the concern every one of them would say is, we're missing the biggest opportunities because people aren't wanting to come here. We need a place that people can come and collaborate, and bumpability, we like to use that term, is just people be able to bump into each other. We're working on an AI film studio. We're working on a housing innovation lab. We have a water campus. We have all these elements that are going to be part of this, that are solving big problems. We'll have hundreds of people, startups incubating there. We're going to have 100 beds there, so students from all over the state are going to be there incubating ideas or doing high-impact projects, but just a place where all of that can happen. But if you don't have that right in the core, you kind of miss the secret sauce. So that's what we're developing right now, $150 million project to be one of the largest innovation campuses in the Western United States that we're building, and we're about to break ground on in October.
Wow. So amazing. So breaking ground, and how big is this structure?
A couple 100,000 square feet. It's 6 stories high.
Wow.
Yeah,
so auditoriums.
Full auditorium. We'll have lab space, design thinking space, prototyping labs, startup space. Like I said, AI film studio, virtual production. A lot of things that really are supporting. And then what we're doing is, because it is under the USHI system. So again, Nucleus is part of USHI. We're just an independent entity, which allows us to be nimble and innovative and kind of more business friendly, move at the speed of business. But all of our higher education institutions, we're collaborating with on ways that we can leverage this space, so that if you're at Utah Tech or if you're at Utah State, we're going to be able to leverage programming that's going to happen there for their schools. So they can even be delivering programs, or they can send their students down, or vice versa, things that we're doing at the point, we want to make sure we're integrating at each of our schools to make sure that innovation is getting shared throughout the state and not just there at the point of the mountain.
Wow. Okay. So you have a very clear vision for this. Even as I'm talking to you right now, it's almost like you're picturing it in your head, frankly. Yeah. For those who have not seen an innovation hub like this before, they have not seen a convergence hall. I think maybe for them, it's more difficult to imagine. So in as much detail as you can provide, what does an average week look like at this new convergence hall? And you said 2 years before. 2 years
before it'll be built, yeah.
2 years before it'll be built. But 2 years, and essentially it's done being used. So what is a week worth of, if you were just to walk into the building and hang out for a week, what are you going to see?
Yeah, so, I mean, we modeled it, like I said, we kind of took the best of a lot of different models of things, and then we coupled it with the things that Utah does better than anyone else in the world. And I believe this sincerely, is our ability to really collaborate. So I look at Station F in France, which I think you've been before. Have you been to Station F?
No, I'm not even familiar with it.
Station F is one of the biggest incubators. 1,000 companies are incubating. Really cool. It's an old rail station that converted into an incubator. Incredible in terms of the density of companies that are there. It's a really good convener for startups and venture, just a place to pull people together. They do 600 events in a building not much larger than what ours is. 600 events, just programming. A lot of companies will come in and do their program.
600 events a year.
A year.
So essentially 2 events a day.
Every day. Yeah, it is just constantly different types of events. And we say it could be smaller events. It could be, I'll give you an example. Microsoft is a big sponsor there. They've got 30 of their companies incubating there, that they're doing events for their own companies regularly. All these different organizations are standing up. You've got a life science group that's doing their own, incubation of different ideas and events that are happening. So it's just really trying to bring all and industry folks. So BioHive, for instance, being able to have a space that they could leverage. They want to hold 500 people. We have a great location for that. You want to hold 50 people. We have a smaller space for that. But just a community space to bring people together. So that's a lot of it, is you're just going to have activity, right? The other is just getting students from across the state working together on cool high impact projects. One of the biggest things that students want is, I want to do real world things. It's great when you're sitting on campus, maybe you do a senior project, but it still feels very academic. How do we get them out of the classroom and living and breathing in a business world where they're working alongside business people? And vice versa, corporate research. We have a lot of corporates that are saying, I want to be more tapped into students and to professors, where I've got to solve these big problems, and I need a group of students, or I need an expert in some technical field to help me work together on this problem that they're solving. Or it could be a researcher that's they've developed out their technology. They need a little bit of space to really develop it out more, in terms of the business side of it. We incubate them there and give them access to all these different resources and connections.
So
when you have a tough health insurance question, the last thing you need is a 40-minute hold and someone who's never heard of Utah. University of Utah Health Plan's health insurance is different. We're your neighbor. We know the local doctors and over 20,000 providers statewide, from Logan to St. George. And when you need world-class care, University of Utah Health is right here. Local health insurance expertise, real people, real help. University of Utah Health Plans. Find your health insurance plan at uofuhealthplan.utah.edu.
So you're talking about the largest incubator that this state has ever seen, collaborating with 100% of the major academic institutions in the state, all in one centralized location, literally the center of our valley, north to south, about as centrally located as one could get, in the middle of, what I would call the Wasatch hub, so to speak. And how is that financed? Yeah,
so the state's funding the building. All the programming will be private.
All the programming is private.
All of the programming, we're raising money for all the programming right now. So the state's, and that was by intent.
Okay.
Well, because if it was a privately funded building, it changes the nature of that building. It becomes a real estate play. It becomes, we're trying to monetize it. So the state's going to fund the core, and then the businesses are going to help support all the ongoing revenue through programming. because a lot of that is we want to make sure that we're providing to these universities, to these startups, right? We want to be able to make sure that they're getting access. Some student who never has ever thought about being an entrepreneur, they didn't come up in the ranks. Maybe their parents never even thought about being a business owner, and they're just starting out from scratch. And it's, financially, they want a place where they can go and get the same access that anybody else can get. That's what's really important to us.
Does it have to be students, or let's say that, so one of my employees at Seek Labs, and good grief, we hope this happens. It's happened at Recursion, it's happened at Denali, other major companies in the Valley. We always hope that one of our people goes and starts their own company. We hope they start their own therapeutics company. We believe that's good for us. We believe it's good for the ecosystem. So could they also go and set up?
Not just students. I bring in the student side because we want to make sure we're connecting all of our students.
Yeah.
But absolutely, businesses primarily will be a lot of these very early, again, where government needs to play. If they're already got some funding and they're already off to the races, there's plenty of places in Utah that can help support them.
This is for those
really early, just trying to get the ideation, getting that proof of concept. They need that really early support, mentoring. You got a place for them.
Okay, so awesome. Really, really cool. 2 years from now, this is rolling. This isn't theory. It's not hypothetical. We've
been building it out for the last year. And I'd say in the working groups, it's been over 5 years. We've had thousands of people from around the state involved in defining, refining the whole process.
It's amazing. Okay, so all of that falls under this not so new organization. What is it, about a year and a half old?
Yeah, Nucleus. I've been doing the same role for 5 years in USHE.
Okay.
We had multiple programs, a separate fund. This last year, it was under the commissioner's direction, said we just got to roll this under one entity. We're going to create its own independent entity rather than sitting inside USHE with a bunch of different programs. Now it's just one independent entity.
So just walk me through then as direct as you can so that there's no gray space for any of our listeners so that they truly understand what Nucleus is. Walk us through what are the different initiatives within Nucleus. And again, Nucleus, I love the idea, nuclear, like this is the nucleus of the cell. We're biology, right?
Yeah,
we like that. So it's centrally located. It's the brains of the thing. Yeah. So if you're talking about it from that perspective, walk me through what are the initiatives of Nucleus? Not even where they came from, but what is Nucleus doing today?
So we have a number of programs. Our fund is a $40 million venture capital fund.
And it's specific to what?
So by mandate, this was also something I learned when I went around the world. And I was really curious, how do they get through that? We all hear about the Valley of Death, but what were the vehicles that helped get from research or really early R&D through actual getting it launched? And I was in North Carolina, I saw INC-IDA. I was in Philadelphia, I saw the Ben Franklin's. Israel has a different model. They put 0.5% of GDP that goes directly into innovation. All these different areas, Cambridge Enterprises out of Cambridge, had some kind of a fund, this gap funding that was either government or nonprofit that was really filling that gap of validation. First off, if it's just sitting in the university, lots of universities are funding their research. But if it's sitting inside the university and it's university people doing the analysis, VCs typically discount that, right? They're like, I don't want to go through the bureaucracy of going through university. So it's one level removed, which is nice. It's run by people who actually have venture capital experience. So my whole team has former VC experience, very tightly connected with industry. And a lot of what we're doing is we're trying to identify the research much earlier on and even helping pull it out, or if it's at the IP stage. But our job is to help validate the technology, give them that first shot in the arm, saying the state is committed to this, and we only put $250,000 checks in, but usually we'll be some of the first capital in, which they can then leverage and go out and raise the additional capital. Say, hey, I've got the state behind me, and then I'm going to go out and raise another million or two to then get the funding to launch that business.
Okay, so this is a state-sponsored venture capital fund. Mm-hmm. So the money came from the legislature.
It was off of earnings, so it was never actually, which is helpful to know this real quick. The legislature did allocate it, but it was money off the earnings from the fund of funds. So it was never actually state appropriated dollars, like tax dollars directly. These were earnings that came off of the former fund of funds. So this
is profit.
Yeah,
the state is literally taking profit from another program that it had and it's taken that profit and it said, okay, we're going to reinvest this profit back into industry.
Yeah.
And what industries are included in that?
So actually, I think it's important that you catch that, because when you look at why Utah has the capital vehicle it does today, 20 years ago, whatever it was, when they created the fund of funds, they went really heavy on tech, right? And so we were doing a fund of funds investing mostly in tech funds, and that's why we got a lot of tech VCs in Utah, really helped to get them going.
Yeah.
What we were seeing over the last 15 years is tech's done very well. We have an incredible VC ecosystem.
So
and
it worked.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And as we were looking at the capital ecosystem of where the capital gaps were, it was really in this deep tech early stage. And so we basically said, okay, we've done that. Now we need to figure out how to help support this deep tech early venture.
So deep tech, life sciences, AI,
aerospace and defense,
aerospace,
AI, quantum, energy, stuff that's a lot harder to build, has more of a research bent to it.
Right.
And so that's the model that we were going out and finding, and we modeled after, was really supporting this deep tech capital ecosystem and helping build, which we're really excited. We're seeing, and you know this, but a lot more venture funding in that deep tech space is coming to Utah.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, we actually have some very serious VC groups starting to invest in Utah in ways that we have never seen before.
Yeah.
So it's working again, is what you would argue.
Well, and we're hoping is, and so we find we see a lot of deal flow that we personally invest in, but we also pass a lot on to other funds, and they're just now seeing all this. A lot of these funds are really surprised to see how much is actually coming out of Utah in that space. They've heard about our incredible SaaS businesses, but most of them didn't fully appreciate everything else that's happening here.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Utah is a global leader in healthcare innovation. From internationally recognized cancer research to diagnostics reaching patients in the most remote corners of the world, the future of health is being built right here in Utah. On October 8th, 2026, BioHive Premieres brings our state's leadership to center stage at the Salt Lake City Megaplex. Across multiple theaters, each showcase highlights a different frontier of health and the innovators driving it forward. Join industry leaders, researchers, entrepreneurs, clinicians, students, and our BioHive community to uncover the breakthroughs shaping the future of health. Register today at biohive.com/BioHive Premieres.
Interesting. I travel a lot. And when I'm in DC, New York, Boston, San Francisco, San Diego, which are really the places that I travel to most, I mean, life sciences, I think that makes sense. But when I'm meeting with VCs, it used to be, even if I go back 18 months ago, 2 years ago, they would say, what is in Utah?
Yeah.
And today, very different. I mean, BioHive's worked on this, BioUtah's worked on this, the state's worked on this. I mean, there's a lot of people who have, companies have worked on it as well. But they now say, oh, there's a lot happening in Utah. And in fact, I had one stodgy banker, who's a good friend of mine from New York, who said, if I came to Utah, could you set me up with a bunch of companies? We just went from company to company to company. He came in for 2 days. We spent one day at Seek, and then the rest of the days we spent at other companies, which was really cool. But I want to walk through. So how many investments have you guys actually made?
23.
23.
A couple of follow-on.
Okay. So some of those you're doubling down on.
Yeah.
And so this is seed capital Series A. Where do you guys stop?
So it's pre-seed. We're early. We'll go up. We'll pro rata. We'll keep going. I mean, obviously, we want to continue to capture upside on our winners.
Yeah.
We've had those that have done follow-on. We've followed on.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nucleus. Now we've got two things: Convergence Hall. Mm-hmm. We have the fund. What else is in Nucleus?
Nucleus Grow. So everybody that's doing SBIRs, STTRs. So this was actually under the former USTAR. So I have a whole team dedicated to helping going after all these federal grant dollars. We have within that a UTIF, which is a loan, not a loan, it's a grant fund, kind of a convertible loan.
I'm just going to have you fix your mic if you would.
Sorry.
No problem.
Like a convertible loan fund or grants, but we provide early non-dilutive capital, and we help them go get SBIRs and STTRs.
How does that work?
So I have a whole team who are very good at this, and it's going after these phase 1, phase 2 SBIRs. So they help them write the grants, tee it up, even provide some support financially for them as they're starting to go after these non-dilutive. So this is really earlier in the process. as they're starting to go through that. More for businesses. I mean, obviously the SBIRs are universities as well. But I mean, just in the last year, I think we've helped get $13 million in non-dilutive funding for companies here in Utah.
Wow. So is that a paid service? Companies pay for that?
No, it's free. It's part of our service. Yeah, everything we do is the state's paying for it.
So any company in life sciences, other industries as well, who's applying for an SBIR can call the Nucleus.
Yep, Nucleus Grow.
Nucleus Grow.
And we have a whole team that they've been doing this for 20 years, very well-versed in it, know how to navigate through that whole system. So we do that. We have a policy lab. So we actually have stood this up as well. You mentioned the two parts of it, VC, from the industry and business, or from government from higher ed business. Government's also a very critical part of this. Is a lot of the technology that we're seeing today, the state laws have not caught up with, right? We're just moving very quickly. And so a lot of the things that we're seeing today, not that it's blatantly not allowed, but we need to update. It's like AI, blockchain, all these new technologies. Now we're doing the quantum initiative.
Yeah.
We have a whole team of students that we've actually trained up, worked with two of our former legislators, one who's a professor at at the U, and another one who has some experience as well at the university. But we now have trained up, I think we have 5 interns right now. We're probably going to grow that to 10. But they do policy analysis for these startup companies. So as they're starting to have some kind of barriers as they're going through their processes, or, hey, there's this new technology that really we don't have any code that supports it, we've got a whole team that can help do the analysis and actually work directly with the legislature potentially, and if they want to change legislation.
So you're just clearing the path.
Yeah, making it really easy for a company. I want to, that I would say, if there's one thing we want to be, and this is kind of our model, we want to be the state that's the best in the country at moving idea to impact. And for these companies, what are the barriers? I want to work with a university. Well, it's cumbersome. I don't know who to go to for a lab. I don't know who to go to for a team of students. I want to do corporate innovation. I don't know who to talk to. I have this policy issue. I don't know who to go to. I need this government resource. I don't know who to go to. We want to make it very, very simple that you can come in through one door and get access to the whole ecosystem of the state.
So really, any new business that's coming to Utah or that's starting in Utah, frankly, should probably start by going through Nucleus's door first. If you're in tech, deep tech, life sciences, if you're in any of those spaces, you should probably start at Nucleus.
Yeah, I mean, right now we have very dedicated programs. The goal with the point, of course, with the Convergence Hall is that, yes, you have a physical space. Anybody could show up at any time, and you're trying to connect into anywhere in the ecosystem. I mean, we talk about this a lot, but there's like there's in other states, you'll have like a core, maybe it's a district. It's just an innovation district. And then you got to go to the capital if you want to go talk to policy people. And then you got to go up to higher ed people. What we want at Convergence Hall is we're bringing all of those people to you. So you literally can come from anywhere in the world. Like, we want to have this as an awesome soft landing. And we talk to people, I go on these trade missions, right? And they say, we have businesses that want to come to Utah. They're very early. They don't know who to talk to. The goal is you can come in the front door and we can connect you to whoever you need to be connected with. And it's a free service. It's what the state provides. You want to get connected to workforce? Great. We can connect you in. You want to talk to policy people? Great. We can connect you in. You want VCs? Here are all the VCs that are working in this space. Whatever that thing is, I want to be part of an industry association. Great. Here's your network. We just want to be able to make sure that we're connecting people as quickly as possible. And then when it comes from idea, like I said, we want to be the fastest of idea to impact. There's so many barriers of friction along the way. Our job is to try to reduce that, whether it be government, whether it be higher education, whatever that is. How do we reduce the friction so that we can move faster in the other state? And that, to me, I think, is our greatest competitive advantage. I'd say Israel is probably one of the only other ones, as I look at the full ecosystem, maybe Singapore, that can move that quickly between those 3 different areas.
And Utah's about to go compete with an Israel and a Singapore.
I believe we can. Yeah, I think we're positioned. We have all the right ingredients. We just haven't put the right resources and really facilitated it. But I think we can.
That's phenomenal. Okay, so anything else we need to cover about Nucleus, or I'm going to pivot to go ahead. Okay, so let's pivot to your other role, separate from Nucleus, but obviously, a lot of overlap. I mean, this is an organization that's existed for decades. Governor's Office of Economic Development has had a number of different initiatives over the years. But one of the things that I think has been core to GoEd for at least as long as I've been working with them, which is through kind of multiple leadership changes, is that you have the industries that you have identified that are priorities.
Yeah.
So let's kind of start there. What are those industries? Where is GoEd today? What's happening with GoEd in the future?
Yeah, and I'll even kind of back up to how I ended up in this role, because it was not a job I was looking for.
This seems to be a common theme. By the end of this, I'm going to be offering you a job, I think.
No, I appreciate it, and I'm grateful for the governor. I think the governor had a vision of what he wanted his second term to be for economic development. And a lot of the work I was doing with Nucleus aligned with what I think he saw the vision is we are where we are today as a state because of decisions that were made 10 years ago.
Right.
The engineering initiative is a great example, heavy focus on tech, EdTIF. We recruited all these tech companies. We provided a lot of the workforce initiatives. Now, I will say the world was a little different 10 years ago. We had cheap housing, cheap labor, and a great workforce. A little easier to go recruit businesses to come here and easier to keep companies here sometimes because of the cost of things. So how do you compete in this generation? Well, going forward, it's going to be the exact things that we just talked about. Utah is one of the leaders when it comes to driving innovation. We want to be on the cutting edge of these technology areas that, we talk about our targeted industries. That's energy and minerals, which is a new one. Life sciences, healthcare fits into that. Advanced, aerospace and defense. And I'm going to forget a couple. Fintech, right? The whole fintech world. On the tech side, yes, tech's important, but we're really leaning in on AI, quantum, and blockchain. Like, what does the future technology look like? And so those are the targeted industries that we're really aggressively leaning in to help support. And if you look at like the incentives, a lot of what GoEd does is provides incentives and grants. It's really in those targeted areas. And it's not that we don't care about the rest of the ecosystem. Obviously, we care a lot about them. But where does government play? A lot of those ecosystems are doing great without government. In some of those targeted areas, there's still a need for support from government to really accelerate those types. And like life sciences, there's still a lot of funding that needs to happen through the research side to really drive that. R&D tax credits are really important for your space, for instance. Government still needs to lean in. So those are the areas that GoEd really puts an emphasis on. And I would say in the past, I think we've always had targeted industries. I think one of the things that I've tried to change is you were part of this, but we wanted to bring in all of our, we reconvened the Governor Advisory Council for each of those areas, but we actually put them in working groups. And we said, we want you to come back and tell us,
Right.
what are your biggest barriers? Where do we need to do better? And it was incredible, the feedback we got. And they broke it, each group that we had ended up with about 3 targeted areas, and they all came back with very specific recommendations. And as the governor and I were sitting there listening to all these things, it was like, man, most of these things we can do. And this is what our industry is saying. Hey guys, this is how we can make Utah the best. Now, one of the things you mentioned earlier, which I love, people don't know all the great things that are happening in Utah. So we're hearing outside of the state, maybe there's not as much awareness as we would like to see.
Right.
So one of the first things we said is we're going to build out a full marketing strategy, external marketing strategy, and we're going to go a lot more aggressively to help the world know the great things that are happening here in Utah. But those are just some of the takeaways we got from those groups.
So super interesting. And I've been involved in those groups for years through multiple administrations and have been lucky to be invited in and have a chance to converse with the governor and talk through things. But I will bluntly say on the record, of all of the meetings I've ever had with the governor in one of those working groups, this last one was hands down the best. It was a completely different approach. This is the first time that I really felt like there were tangible solutions being put on the table. And then the governor's response was phenomenal. Let's do that.
Oh, he was excited.
I mean, it was an immediate response of let's jump into that one and that one. Okay, that one's a little harder. I'm going to have to work on that for a while. We're going to have to talk through it. We're going to have to bring some people around the table. But there were some things that I left that meeting feeling like the governor's about to take action. And is that
oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Were the other ones, but the non-life science ones were the
every
other
one
ones?
of them was the exact same.
Way.
And I think the challenge is in the past, I don't know if people had put it in that format. I think they'd raised the concerns, but we required you to actually come with specific requests.
Yeah, there were slides that said, we want you to put out this. We want you to, in your next speech, say this.
Yes.
It was very direct.
And he wants that. So when we talked about those advisory groups, it really is intended to be kind of like his kitchen cabinet of like people that can really be frank with him and say, hey, you're not hitting this hard enough, or there's these concerns around how we're engaging with the ecosystem. He was very receptive to that. And yeah, between the governor, myself, our team, our job now is to go and execute on as many of those as we can. Some of them I think are going to be a little harder. Some of them would require policy changes.
Right.
We'd work with the legislature. But many of those things are things that we absolutely can start doing now. And I know the governor feels very strongly, and he's told me very, very adamantly this second term, he really wants to be, economic development wants to be one of his major initiatives, and specifically on where's the future going, right? I want to know in 5 and 10 years that we position the state in the right way, that we caught the next wave, and we're not still sitting on stuff that happened 10 years ago.
So 2 questions for you. One, and they're a little harder maybe, but the first one is, there are plenty of people that would say government shouldn't have a role in business.
Yeah.
Government needs to get out of our way, shouldn't be actively engaged. What do you say to that person?
Yeah, I would say it depends on what they're referring to, because I think if you said, should they be investing in workforce? Absolutely. Should they be investing in, like, some of the stuff that, like, what a lot of the stuff that your groups came up with are things that actually are the role of government. Now, where I think people get a little bit concerned is like incentives and grants and things. Those are typically where people go, is that the role of government? And in my opinion, we're very limited in terms of the types of incentives we're doing. Again, we are where we are today. When people say that, often they're looking at our tech sector and saying, look how well it's doing, without remembering that there was a lot of incentives and investment.
It didn't
from
just
the state.
happen.
Yeah, heavy recruitment from the state to making this a tech hub. Why is our economy so well? Why is it that we can pay for roads and schools and all these things that are so critical to the citizens of the state? Well, there were things very early on that if government hadn't played an active role in, we wouldn't have the ecosystem we have today. But I agree with them 100%. I'm somewhat libertarian at heart. And so I do believe strongly, if it's not the role of government, we shouldn't be there. But there are definitely things we should be investing in. As I look at, like, for instance, life sciences, I'm looking at quantum right now. We're looking even at AI. If we don't make investments, we will be left behind, and our economy 10 years from now will not look like it does today.
So I have a friend who is what I would call extreme libertarian. One of my closest friends. I love this guy, and he's investing really heavily right now. He caught the philanthropic bug, and so he's at the end of his career, and he got involved in this community in one of the African nations, and he has been investing, and he's a firm believer in, teach a man to fish and they eat for a lifetime, give a man a fish and they eat for a day, right? That kind of basic principle. And so he went over and he started to try to build businesses, and he came back, and I said, we were out to lunch. I'm like, how's it going? He's like, Jared, you can't build a business because there's no road. Like you can't actually get the goods, and they have really inconsistent power. So you can't get the power. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think we take for granted on a daily basis that are because of our government, that give us, and that was the other one. He's like, we have to literally train these people. They have never gone to school. We have to teach them to read and write so that we can get them to work towards being a part of a workforce. So essentially that's your argument. There's this role of government that completes the picture. It's that infrastructure piece.
Yeah, I'm going to put on my former legislative hat. Utah is one of the best fiscally managed states in the country, one of only 8 AAA bond rated. We have less debt than we have in rainy day funds. Like, we're basically debt free in Utah. We have paid down so much debt, at the same time giving $1.5 billion in taxes back to the citizens. At the same time, we've built massive investments into roads over the last 5 years. Also giving teachers one of the largest salary increases. We used to be the lowest in starting salary. We're one of the highest now, starting salaries in Intermountain. We've done all that because of a great economy. And Utah believes strongly in fiscal responsibility more than any other state. And this is what we keep getting accolades for. But we also know there's times to invest. Infrastructure, workforce. Those are the things that we really need to focus on. Water is becoming a much bigger deal. How do we make sure that we have water preparing for the next 10 years of growth?
Right.
So the state will heavily invest in, when I think about economic development, that's the stuff that most businesses care about. Now, regulatory environment, ironically, that's not a cost. That's limiting government. We pride ourselves on having one of the least, even with AI, when we did that bill, I was the one that ran it. We put safeguards around it. We're trying to build the right protection, but we also believe in that light touch. We want to let innovation thrive. So I think that's a lot of what business wants to see. In terms of infrastructure, capital, we do invest in those things. But those are the things that I think government should do, because private government, it doesn't make sense financially to do it. Nor if it does, if the private government does it, then there's a separate motive. So there's certain things where I think we want to make sure government's funding the right things and get out of the way. Okay,
so final question then.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, one question, then the final question. How do you create staying power? I mean, Nucleus sounds to me incredible. You guys have been at this for years. You're building something that I think is pretty phenomenal. New governor, new administration, legislature turns over. How do you create that continuity? I mean, in Singapore, it's been very easy because of their government, because of their model, to have that continuity. I would argue something very similar for Israel. But how does Utah how do you build this with staying power so that we have continuity from administration to administration?
Yeah, that actually is very important. In fact, I did a full study I'd be happy to share with you, and doing analysis of all of the different innovation districts in the world. And I actually broke it down by a number of different factors. And one of the themes that's very consistent is those that have the most long-term success have done certain things to make sure that happened. One is that they invested the right amount of capital into it, so there's already investment involved. The other is that it's actually embedded inside code. So Nucleus is actually created in code with a very specific mandate that is very much held accountable to that code. And so that's a big part of it.
Code meaning legislative code.
Yeah. So by law, we're going to be sticking around unless they go and say, get rid of them. Now, I will say one of the challenges we've had of previous efforts on this is that the way that they measured success was not in alignment as what legislators were hoping to see. And so I think what we've tried to do with Nucleus is make sure that our outcomes and objectives and metrics align very much with what the goal of the legislature is, so that as we continue, that will be able to continue in longevity. The other is now we're starting to already see the success. So sometimes it takes a while. The challenge with U-Star, as an example, is incredible program, but they put a lot of money on the front end. It was very input focused. Ours is very output focused. Put a lot of money in, and they were waiting for years to see outcomes because that was the intent. We go hire these really high caliber professors, and then over the next 10 years, hopefully they can come up with some ideas that can be commercialized. Ours is nice because day one, we've taken the exact inverse. We sit outside, we're identifying things that are already happening. Everything we're doing is action-oriented. We're already putting capital to work. We're already seeing every dollar we put in, we get $4 back. We can prove that today because of us investing. Now we go raise additional capital. So I think we've created the right model, I think aligns, but we've also embedded inside code, and it's under the Board of Higher Education that are very strongly supporting. So even if the governor left, you're not going to have a whole different new board. You could, but I think a lot of people are already saying this is the model we want to continue with.
Okay, so final question. Out of everything you're seeing in Utah, and you're one of the most involved individuals in so many things. I mean, even coordinating this podcast recording today, it took longer to schedule you than nearly every member of Congress.
I'm sorry.
No, it's just fine. I mean, I think it shows how involved you are. What is not getting the attention it deserves? If you could point to one single entity, one single initiative, whatever, what is not getting the attention it deserves?
Internally, I think it's the collaboration, coordination that's happening. I've tried across the ecosystem. I think it's doing better. The other, I've tried to make a much bigger emphasis, is how much of a role our higher education is playing in the economic development of our state. I think I will say, as a legislator, there's been some challenges with higher ed in terms of perception lately. And I think there was some stuff that was definitely warranted in terms of needing to make some changes in higher ed, some reforms. But when you look at how much they drive our economy, not just workforce, but I'm talking how much they are coming up. I mean, the U especially, and BYU, and now Utah State's doing more of this. But how much of the things that they're doing are actually driving some of the largest companies in Utah? I don't think that's been fully appreciated. So I'm leaning very heavily on that. I would say externally, my biggest concern as I travel around the world and I travel around the country, nobody sees Utah. And I get this brought up to me every time. And it's not necessarily that we want to bring more people here, but we need to build our presence for our companies. So when you go outside and you're talking to people in New York or whatever, either you're trying to recruit a high-level C person,
Right.
and they're like, oh my gosh, I keep hearing about Utah. I got to come to Utah. Or businesses that want to do business with Utah. I want to next couple of years, huge push on how do we build our brand and really be out there. So I think that's one of the biggest gaps and I heard this from every one of our industry groups, is it's great that we all know we're doing awesome, but we need to help share the great things that are happening here in Utah.
Phenomenal. Great work. Pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining and for everything you're doing for the state. I sincerely really appreciate it, Jefferson.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
Thanks for tuning into HiveCast by BioHive. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and share it with someone who would find it valuable. You can find more episodes and updates at biohive.com or by following BioHive Utah on LinkedIn and Instagram. Thanks for being part of the Hive. We'll see you next time.